Hello, welcome back to Outside Xbox. I'm Mike, I'm here with Andy.
Hello.
And we just got back from the Microsoft Xbox briefing here at E3 2016. And our Xbox One has been made obsolete twice in the course of one conference. We've got two new Xboxes on the way.
They managed to have announced two new consoles in the course of one conference. There was one at the start, and then just as you were getting used to that, they announced another one to make that one obsolete.
It was,
I guess,
bizarre. Probably the most overachieving Xbox conference I've ever seen. So let's get the first one out of the way first, which is the Xbox One S, so the slim version. It was a real moment for me when they actually showed the size difference between the normal Xbox One and this thing. It's 40% smaller. That doesn't sound like a lot, but
but when you see the video of it kind of shrinking down into it looks tiny compared to the other one, and it's got a built-in power supply, so you don't need a giant power brick.
Yeah, I've got a leaning tower of those behind my television, and so actually that's going to be a lot more convenient. So let's just talk through what it kind of changes. Obviously, it's much smaller. It's got this power supply built into it. It supports 4K, but not 4K video games, just 4K videos, so like Netflix and Amazon Prime and things like that. It supports HDR, but I believe you need an HDR TV to run that.
Yeah, sorry, explain what HDR is for people who don't know what that means.
So basically, HDR is high dynamic range lighting, so it allows you to kind of get really sort of dark blacks and really like bright colors and kind of balance those. And there's a bunch of new TVs coming out doing this. It does add to image fidelity, not to any great cost in terms of graphical power. It's just a better way of sort of processing the image. So it doesn't mean it has to be any more powerful. Things will look slightly better on the Xbox One S if you have the correct hardware, as I understand it. And there's a couple of little things like the new color scheme. It's this robot white. It looks quite cool.
It costs $299.
Right, exactly.
I'm not sure how many pounds, if they've said that yet.
£250.
£250
at sort of entry level, but that's with a 500 gigabyte hard drive.
Yeah, they're doing a 2 terabyte kind of special edition for launch.
Launch edition, yeah, which will be quite nice, I'd imagine. But obviously, as with the regular Xbox One, even if you buy the 500 gig one, you can just plug in USB 3 hard drives. That's what I do. I've got like about 3 of them dangling off the back of my Xbox. But
it's a
couple of other
state,
things.
honestly.
It's horrible, yeah. Right next to the leaning tower of power supplies.
I'm surprised your house hasn't burned down yet.
Yeah, me too. Well, we're out in LA. Maybe
probably
on fire
has.
Right now.
You're going to come home to a smouldering pile of ashes. Save me, Xbox One S.
So the only other thing that I can remember from the announcement was that there's a slightly increased range on the controller. So if you want to be further away from your small console to make it look even smaller, you can do that and still play the game.
You keep it with you when you wander to the kitchen to get a drink and then come back, and you
I
won't
used to
have
do that all the time with voice chat on the old headset. So that's the Xbox One S, which was the new exciting thing for all of about an hour, and then they announced Project Scorpio.
Which is not a giant
scorpion
that Phil Spencer is going to destroy downtown LA.
Just pilot this giant robot.
Which was my initial prediction.
Well, I mean, I wish it was that.
Yeah.
It would have been much more.
I owe you $100. I can't believe I bet it was going to be that. It was never going to be that. What was I thinking? But yeah, Project Scorpion, which I've been calling it. Project Scorpio, which is just a ludicrously powerful Xbox One, like a sarcastically powerful Xbox One.
So they've gone from, the big number was 6 teraflops, which means absolutely nothing to you until you find out and Google that the Xbox One has a 1.3 teraflop GPU, so graphics processor.
So like 5 times better, almost.
Yeah, essentially,
I was talking to someone from Digital Foundry this afternoon, and I said I didn't know what a teraflop was, and he started to explain it to me. And you immediately passed out. I still don't know what a teraflop is.
Just toppled like a tree that had been chopped down.
Yeah.
So essentially, this thing's ridiculously powerful. We're talking like high-end PC specs right here. So the aim is 4K, 4K console gaming, which has not been capable. The Xbox One's not capable of it. The PS4 isn't capable of 4K gaming. Even a lot of high-end PCs aren't. So they're going to have to really go for this in order to make that work. The other big objective for Project Scorpio is VR at the kind of level of fidelity that you'd expect from the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive. And what's interesting actually is a little thing that people have picked up on is that they haven't confirmed which VR headset they want to go with. Now, I figured it would be Oculus because they've had a partnership previously, right? So if you buy an Oculus Rift retail, kit, you get an Xbox controller in there. So you figure they're pretty good friends, and that would be a really easy way for Microsoft to just plug, instead of doing the PlayStation route, which is build your own VR headset, just plug in an Oculus and you're made, basically.
So do you think they're hedging their bets, just trying to work out which one's going to come up out on top?
I think so, yeah. So there's obviously this sort of tension between the Oculus and the Vive, and it'll be interesting to see which one ultimately becomes more successful.
Yeah,
Vive
you don't want to go with Betamax when everyone's buying VHS.
Exactly.
Or HD, DVD, and Blu-ray. Microsoft went on the wrong side of that in the past, so they've been burned before.
So they've made that mistake before.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to kind of watch whether people are more interested in the kind of Vive, kind of top-end, room scale sort of VR thing, or whether people prefer the convenience of just popping on the Oculus headset and being able to just do everything from a controller. So that's kind of interesting. Todd Howard popped up in the little video to say that Fallout 4 VR was one of the things he wanted to put on Project Scorpio. So they're sort of serious about this. So 4K graphics if you're sitting in front of your TV, VR at the resolutions and frame rates that are required to make VR work without you blasting vomit all over your living room.
Right.
These are like really substantial challenges in terms of specs. So this is going to be an extremely powerful box. But the key thing is it's still going to be built on the Xbox One platform. So nothing's going to change sort of in terms of software. And you're going to be able to play all of your, forget backwards compatibility. It's just going to be the same software system, and it's going to be running the same sort of code. It's just that if you have the Scorpio, your games are going to look much, much better. So it's a really interesting thing. It's kind of breaking the console generation thing. Ordinarily this kind of leap in power would be a new console. It would be Xbox 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
But what Microsoft is saying is they're not interested in building a new console and a new generation. They just want to turn it into a platform that is consistently updated, which is kind of new for consoles, and it's sort of the same noises that Sony is making with the
PlayStation Neo,
or whatever it's called. It's a fairly dramatic change and a big sort of announcement to make a year out. This thing's coming at the end of next year. We're going to have another console war at the end of 2017, only 4 years after the last one.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're positioning this, though, as a kind of very high-end premium thing. They didn't announce a price,
right,
which makes me think that it's probably going to be fantastically expensive.
Yes, I think that's a safe bet. Just looking at the components that are in there and the amount you would need to spend to create a PC that would be capable of the kind of performance they're talking about, you're talking, I guess, close to $1,000. So, there may be slight discounts there, in terms of bulk and stuff, but I think what's really interesting is you look at the Xbox One S and the immediate gut reaction is, why would you ever buy an Xbox One S when there's a new, more powerful console coming in 12 months' time that is going to blow it out of the water? The only answer to that can be that there'll be a massive, massive difference in price, and the Xbox One S will be a kind of entry-level product for people who aren't as committed to sort of the really high-end graphics. They maybe don't have a 4K TV, so they're not that bothered about that stuff. And then the Scorpio's there for the guys who really want to blow their faces around the other side of their heads with kind of insane level graphics. But I think it's almost, if Microsoft are going to split the generation in the way that I think they want to, they almost need a bigger disparity in prices to really make the difference. Because if it's a bit close, your Xbox One S is just going to wither on the vine.
But I mean, can you sell a console for more than about $600? That was the really high price point for like the original, the PlayStation 3 and things like that. And everyone was like, that's really stretching the limits of what people are prepared to pay for a console.
Conventional wisdom says no. The PlayStation 3, one of the massive calamities was that massive price. Also, one of the big mistakes that Microsoft made was creating the more expensive console. And I think there is still going to be an argument in terms of price between PlayStation Neo and Project Scorpio, because it's all well and good. Project Scorpio may well be the most powerful console ever created. We don't know for sure how it's going to stack up against PlayStation until they come out. But the thing is that even if PlayStation don't commit to the full shebang, as it were, if they're another 200 quid cheaper, people are still going to buy the PlayStation, I think.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean,
so they've got to really play this very, very carefully.
The Neo Geo was much more powerful than the Mega Drive or the SNES, but
it was £600.
It was £600 and the games cost £100 each, so no one bought it.
Yeah, so pricing is still going to be an issue, but ultimately I think it is going to be this bonkers premium sort of product for the real hardcore.
Especially if people are buying it for VR as well, and if it's the HTC Vive, which is already the premium VR headset, so people will be spending a large amount of money on the console and then an almost equally large amount of money on the headset. You're looking at like pushing $2,000 if you're talking about the numbers that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope it would still be the most affordable. I mean, it won't be the most affordable way to get into VR will be a regular bog standard PlayStation 4 and PlayStation VR. That's going to be the cheapest way, and they are going to make it work. It might be a bit rubbish. One of the reasons that people have been talking about the PlayStation Neo is because there's concerns about how well VR can actually work on a regular PlayStation 4. But that will be the cheapest way to get into VR. But you'd hope that maybe a Scorpio would be a cheaper way to get into VR than buying a fully fledged PC that could run the same thing.
I mean, until they announce a price, this is all speculation.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
It seems like it's going to be on the high end.
Yes, but that's the thing. And until they do announce a price, if you already own an Xbox One, why are you going to buy a Slim? And even if you don't already own an Xbox One, are you really not going to wait to see how much the Scorpio costs and whether you can afford it? Because the difference in performance is going to be phenomenal. So what we're going to see with Project Scorpio is effectively this console generation is going to be split. The games are going to be perfectly compatible between the two. For a long time, you'll be able to buy, the next Halo game, for example, you'll be able to buy it, and if you have a Project Scorpio, it's going to run beautifully. And if you have an Xbox One from back in 2013, it's going to look less good, but it will still run. It's the same game, absolutely sort of, same disc in the box or same download code. And this is the first time this sort of generational split has happened. What I'm not sure about is whether it's actually a sort of good thing for gamers, because if we look at the last generation, which was Xbox 360, lasted for about 8 or 9 years. And, assuming your launch Xbox 360 didn't burst into flames or like red ring to bits, you could still buy the latest, GTA 5, you could buy these amazingly advanced games. And, there's that great thing about when a console generation matures, developers work out more ways to sort of extract power from those systems. Which means that your investment of maybe 450 quid or at launch in a 360 lasts you for years and years and years. And this time around, 4 years after spending quite a lot of money on an Xbox One with a Kinect, I'm going to have to now spend probably substantially more money on a Project Scorpio to run games as they're intended by the developers on my 4K television.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well to see how people who have the Scorpio, how they feel about their games being also developed for a much less powerful machine, because they'll be thinking, well, this game could be a lot better if we didn't have to develop it with those guys in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it does run the risk of dividing the community as well.
It's something that PC players have been grumbling about for years, which was that Xbox 360 was this really long generation. All the AAA games, if you wanted to sell a ton of copies, you had to release them on Xbox 360 and PS3, sorry. But that meant the PC versions were rubbish. And now we're seeing, Skyrim Special Edition. All the PC players were probably thinking, you could have done that like 5 years ago, but we didn't get it because it had to run on 360 and PS3. So that kind of grumbling is going to come to a head at some point. And there is going to be a point where the people with the original Xbox One are going to start getting left behind. And I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later, in that VR games are going to be the ones that are the first to kind of leave that generation behind. So
Phil Spencer was saying that all games will be available for everyone, but of course VR won't be, because it literally won't run on anything less powerful than a Scorpio.
So they've committed for a while at least to make sure stuff will run on both consoles, but that at a certain point, just like on the App Store, eventually your phone won't be powerful enough to run certain apps on the App Store, and it's going to be exactly the same with the Project Scorpio stuff. I say VR because, Todd Howard's there talking about Fallout 4 VR. That was playable at the Bethesda conference yesterday. So it exists, it works, it's functioning. For that to be released at any point that is where Fallout 4 is still at all relevant, that's got to be, you know, around the launch time of Project Scorpio. So already, as soon as that console launches, there's going to be experiences that you can only have on the more powerful hardware. And actually, you sort of need that if you're launching a piece of new hardware, because maybe just new, you know, 4K resolution isn't enough to you know, with the same old games, isn't enough to shift consoles. So maybe they do need that kind of experience. But yeah, eventually, your Xbox One will get left behind, and that's going to probably make some people a little bit grumpy. So that's, again, you know, whether that's good for a consumer or not is interesting. But at the very least, you know that any Xbox One game that you bought over the last 3 years and that you will buy over the next year will absolutely work on the Scorpio. And I've no idea whether they're going to sort of, you know, retrofit in resolution bumps and stuff, because you'd assume if they've got a ton of power to play with, it's literally, at the very least, you can just make it run at 4K. Because the demands of the game itself are going to be so much lower. But yeah, eventually, you know, our old Xbox Ones are going to have to be put out to pasture, and it's going to be a bit sad, really.
Yeah. So is this the only time that they're going to do this as well? Is the question? Are they just are they moving towards that sort of Apple system where every year they go, right, here's the new one. It's this much more powerful, and it costs as much as the old one did. I mean,
I really hope not.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds terrible for consumers.
Yeah.
Good for Microsoft. But I mean, is that the model you think they're trying to work towards here with this?
I feel like what's interesting about the Apple model is that what you end up with is, say, the iPhone 6, and then you get the 6S a year later, which is pretty much similar internals, maybe
it's like incremental
a few slight changes and stuff, and then the next one's supposed to be a bigger step change. This feels like although the power is so much, you know, dramatically more powerful, this feels like a sort of step change. And I wonder whether they'll do it again, but actually it feels like this may well be the end of console generations altogether, and that level of compatibility could be a good thing, because in the same way that you can still boot up an old, you know, game on your PC from 10, 15 years ago, assuming, you know, you've got the compatible drivers and stuff, like, as long as the platform remains the same and that compatibility remains the same, and we know how important backwards compatibility is to gamers, that's a good thing. You know, great that you can, in however many years' time, still put Fallout 4 in your disc tray, or, you know, or run it from a download menu, and know that it's just going to work, and it might even have some graphical you know, fanciness to improve it.
Yeah, if you've got every game over the last 10 years that you've bought in the cloud waiting to be downloaded whenever you want it, and it'll run straight off, then,
exactly, yeah,
you know, that's your entire collection ready to go whenever.
So it's sort of it's a bit of a balance. There's positives and negatives, but one thing is absolutely for certain, and this is the first time this has ever happened, and it probably is going to change how consoles are perceived forever.
Yeah.
And I guess the final point is that Microsoft really needs to win this next console war that we're sort of heading into next Christmas.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the PlayStation Neo is, Microsoft is absolutely on the back foot after this sort of Xbox One PS4 battle. So they have to get this one right, because you can't spend this amount of money, you know, an R&D on a new console only 4 years after your last one, to lose basically
2 generations on the trot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, those are our thoughts on the Project Scorpio and the Xbox One S. But what do you think about the whole thing? Do you think Microsoft have got it right, or do you think Sony are going to win this next console war? Let us know in the comments, and do like and subscribe for more from Outside Xbox at E3 2016. All right, so you may have noticed that was a video from E3, not from this comfortable studio. There's so much going on at E3, and you're in danger of missing all the exciting new news and things and new games that have been revealed, unless you click on this little window down here, where you can find out everything that's been going on. There's so much exciting stuff at this show, so check that out. Otherwise, if you'd like a bit of a potluck, we've got down here a video that YouTube is recommending for you. So it's the video YouTube thinks you will like the most. So if you want to find out what that is, and find out whether you like it or not, whether YouTube's crazy robot brain has worked it out properly, then check that one out. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.